You think Hollywood likes to push boundaries? Europe tore the whole rulebook apart. From the 1950s onward, European filmmakers weren't just trying to entertain, they were daring entire nations to question everything. And sometimes, they went so far that governments panicked, theaters were raided, and movies were literally burned. What kind of film could spark riots, arrests, or even be declared illegal to own? These aren't legends. These are the real stories of the movies so dangerous they had to be buried. And by the end, you'll see why every attempt to silence them only made them louder. The spark that lit the fire. Europe after the war was restless. While Hollywood wrapped its stories in glamour and happy endings, European directors were digging into the mess: politics, religion, sex, and power. Audiences wanted truth, but governments wanted order. So when filmmakers began exposing hypocrisy and human darkness, the censors came out swinging. It started small, a few deleted scenes here, a few banned screenings there. But before long, entire countries were drawing lines about what was acceptable. And as you're about to see, those lines didn't just move, they shattered. Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom, 1975. Some movies get called disturbing. Salo laughs at that word. Italian director Pier Paolo Pasolini didn't just make a film, he made a provocation. Based on a 200-year-old novel, it's set in fascist Italy and follows a group of elite sadists who kidnap teenagers and turn them into victims of every imaginable cruelty. There's no score, no heroes, and no mercy. Screenings turned into chaos. Police stormed theaters. Protesters screamed for it to be banned, and governments across Europe agreed. Italy censored entire reels. France said absolutely not. The United Kingdom banned it outright, and Australia refused to even consider a release. But what terrified officials wasn't just what was on screen, it was why it was there. Pasolini wasn't making a horror film. He was making a political statement. He used the story as a mirror, showing how absolute power turns people into monsters. That message hit too close to home. Salo became one of the most banned films in history. Even decades later, some countries only allow it with heavy warnings or edited scenes. Love it or hate it, no one forgets it. And for many, it's the movie that defines the limits of what cinema can show. But if Pasolini shattered boundaries, Stanley Kubrick was about to redefine them. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. When Stanley Kubrick adapted Anthony Burgess's novel, he didn't just make a movie, he made a cultural weapon. A Clockwork Orange hit British theaters like a bomb. Its stylized violence, strange slang, and surreal music weren't just shocking, they felt hypnotic. Audiences were split. Some called it genius, others called it dangerous. Tabloids accused it of inspiring real-life attacks. Soon, the film wasn't just controversial, it was blamed for corrupting an entire generation. Then came the twist. Kubrick himself pulled it from circulation. He didn't want any more blood on his hands, real or imagined. For almost 30 years, British audiences couldn't legally see it. Owning a copy or screening it publicly could get you in trouble. While Europe banned it on moral grounds, Kubrick's self-censorship made it a legend. It became the forbidden fruit of film, whispered about, bootlegged, and studied like a secret. When the ban finally lifted in the year 2000, new audiences found it less shocking, but no less powerful. Kubrick's vision had changed more than cinema, it had changed how society talked about cinema. But if Kubrick's film blurred the line between art and violence, the next movie erased that line completely. Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. Some films crossed the line. Cannibal Holocaust dragged it into the jungle and buried it. Italian director Ruggero Deodato wanted to make the most realistic horror film ever made, and he succeeded a little too well. Shot as a found footage story about a missing documentary crew, The film looked so authentic that people thought it was real. When it premiered in Milan, chaos followed. Authorities arrested Deodato, accusing him of murder. He had to bring his actors into court to prove they were alive. Even after he was cleared, the film became a global target. The United Kingdom put it on their notorious video nasties list. Germany, Norway, and Australia banned it outright. Even now, it remains restricted or censored in multiple countries. What made it so infamous wasn't just the violence, it was the conviction behind it. Deodato shot it like a documentary, forcing viewers to question their own fascination with on-screen suffering. It asked a disturbing question: who's the real savage? The tribes on screen or the audience watching? 4 decades later, Cannibal Holocaust still divides opinion. Some call it genius. Others say it should never have existed. Either way, it proved one thing: realism can be more terrifying than fiction. But not every ban came from blood or violence. Sometimes, just questioning faith was enough to set the world on fire. The Last Temptation of Christ, 1988. Before a single ticket was sold, Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ was already under attack. The idea alone, portraying Jesus as a man who wrestled with temptation and doubt, was enough to ignite protests across Europe. In France and Italy, theaters were picketed and attacked. Some local governments refused to show it at all. In Greece, lawmakers banned it entirely. The irony? Most of the people protesting hadn't even seen the film. They just heard what it might contain. Scorsese wasn't trying to offend. He wanted to explore faith as something human, fragile, and real. But in the eyes of religious leaders, that was blasphemy. The outrage gave the movie a reputation far beyond its actual content. It became a symbol not of controversy, but of the fear that comes from challenging sacred stories. And it showed that in Europe, asking the wrong question could still get your art blacklisted. But if religion caused uproar, one Japanese film imported into Europe made officials lose their minds for a completely different reason. In the realm of the senses, 1976. Few films have ever been treated like contraband quite the way In the Realm of the Senses was. Officially a Japanese production, it was financed and distributed by a French company, and that made it Europe's problem. The film tells the true story of an obsessive love affair in 1930s Tokyo, a passion that spirals into madness and violence. But it wasn't the story that caused panic. It was the explicit realism. Every boundary of censorship, morality, and public decency was broken. In France, police raided theaters. In the United Kingdom and Germany, the film was banned outright. Customs agents seized reels at airports to stop screenings. Director Nagisa Oshima called it an act of freedom, the idea that art should show life exactly as it is, no matter how uncomfortable. Authorities called it obscene. For years, In the Realm of the Senses existed underground. Cinephiles and art students passed around copies like forbidden treasure, and in the process, it became a symbol not of lust, but of artistic defiance. Still, nothing prepared Europe for what came next. A film so blasphemous, even decades later, you can't see the full version. The Devils, 1971. If you ever wondered what happens when religion, politics, and hysteria collide, The Devils is your answer. Directed by Ken Russell, it's based on the true story of a 17th century priest accused of witchcraft. What Russell turned it into was a nightmare of power and paranoia. When it premiered in Britain, censors demanded brutal cuts. Even the shortened version caused an uproar. Politicians condemned it. The Vatican denounced it. France and Italy banned it in several cities. In Finland and Norway, it vanished entirely. The reason was simple. The film showed authority, especially religious authority, as corrupt and hypocritical. And that terrified those in power. Over 50 years later, the uncut version still isn't officially released. The lost footage circulates among collectors, fueling the legend even more. The Devils didn't just break rules, it proved that some truths scare people more than any horror movie ever could. But Europe's next controversy wasn't holy, it was political. And it came disguised as a war story. Love Camp 7, 1969. Sometimes a film isn't just banned, it's erased. Love Camp 7, a British-Italian production, hit screens in the late 1960s and immediately sparked outrage. On paper, it sounded like another war movie, Allied agents infiltrating a German prison camp. But on screen, it became something else entirely. A grim exploitation film that mixed violence and shock with no restraint. The United Kingdom banned it instantly. Ireland followed. Norway joined in. And unlike most films on this list, the ban never really lifted. To this day, Love Camp 7 remains one of the few movies still illegal to own or distribute in the UK. Almost no one has actually seen it, and that only made the legend stronger. Collectors passed around grainy bootleg tapes. Censors called it immoral. Historians called it the movie that kicked off Europe's obsession with testing censorship's limits. By the time the 70s ended, filmmakers realized something important: bans didn't kill movies. They made them immortal. And one director decided to turn that rebellion into art. Pink Flamingos, 1972. John Waters never wanted to play nice. His underground film, Pink Flamingos, was a carnival of bad taste, starring the iconic drag queen Divine and a cast of oddballs who made polite society shudder. Europe went into full panic mode. The United Kingdom refused to even classify it, making it illegal to screen or own. Norway, Switzerland, and Australia slammed it with bans. Officials called it depraved. Critics called it trash. But fans loved it. Bootleg copies spread across borders. Secret screenings became a rite of passage for anyone who loved outlaw art. Waters didn't just embrace the chaos, he celebrated it. He called Pink Flamingos an act of art terrorism, and the audience agreed. The more people tried to bury it, the more famous it became. Over time, it earned a place in film history as the ultimate cult movie. Because sometimes, the most shocking thing about a film isn't what's on screen, it's the freedom it demands to exist at all. Antichrist, 2009. By the 2000s, you'd think Europe had seen everything. Then Lars von Trier released Antichrist, and audiences realized there were still lines left to cross. The film follows a grieving couple retreating to a remote cabin and descending into madness. What starts as grief becomes pure psychological chaos. At its premiere in Cannes, people didn't just walk out, they ran. In France, Spain, and Italy, censors demanded cuts. Some theaters refused to show it at all. Critics wrote essays trying to explain it. Audiences argued whether it was art or cruelty. Von Trier, of course, didn't apologize. He wanted to make a film that forced people to feel discomfort, to face pain and beauty at the same time. And he succeeded. Antichrist isn't banned anymore, but it remains a test of endurance, a film that challenges how far the human mind can go in the name of art. And it proved that controversy isn't dead, it just evolves. Battle Royale, 2000. Long before the Hunger Games, Japan gave the world Battle Royale. When it reached Europe, it was like throwing a match into gasoline. The plot was simple but devastating. A group of students forced by the government to fight to the death until only one survives. But the execution, raw, emotional, and disturbingly real, hit Europe during a time of rising fears about youth violence. Germany debated banning it entirely. The United Kingdom restricted it heavily. France delayed release for years. Critics called it dangerous. Politicians said it glorified violence. But young audiences saw something different. a reflection of the pressure, fear, and competition they already felt in society. Ironically, every attempt to suppress it made it more iconic. It spread underground, inspiring filmmakers, writers, and even game designers. Today, Battle Royale is recognized not just as a cult classic, but as a vision of the future one the world wasn't ready to face when it first appeared. Conclusion: freedom, fear, and the films that survived. Every film on this list broke something: a rule, a law, or a silence. They shocked governments, outraged critics, and terrified censors. But in doing so, they revealed what censorship is really about: fear. Fear of ideas, fear of truth, fear of looking too closely at what society tries to hide. Europe's most banned films weren't destroyed by their bans. They were immortalized by them. They became whispers, bootlegs, urban legends, stories passed down from one daring viewer to the next. And here's the irony: every time a government said, "You can't watch this," people wanted to see it even more. Censorship didn't protect society. It created myth. So maybe the real question isn't how far these films went, but why we're still so afraid of watching what they dared to show. Because in the end, every ban tells the same story, not about the movies themselves, but about us. About what we fear, what we repress, and what we refuse to admit. And if history has proven anything, it's this: you can burn the reels, raid the theaters, and silence the directors, but you can't kill the art that exposes the truth.